I was born on a cold autumn morning, just a few minutes after my twin sister, but that small gap felt like it stretched across my entire life. Even as a child, I felt like a shadow. Always there but never truly noticed. My name is Emily Carter, but in that house, I often felt like just the other one. And my sister Allison? She was the center of everything. My parents, Lisa and David Carter, owned a charming little house in the suburbs of Massachusetts, the picture-perfect image of a middle-class American family. On the surface, they were devoted parents, but in reality, their love was never equally divided. My mother was a successful real estate agent, always busy with clients in impeccably tailored business suits. My father ran a small accounting firm, spending most of his time buried in spreadsheets, rarely paying attention to what was happening at home. But if there was one thing they both did care about, it was Allison. I don't remember the exact moment I realized the imbalance in our house. Maybe it was the afternoon when Mom took us both shopping, and Allison got a brand new pair of sneakers, while I had to pick from the clearance rack. Or maybe it was Christmas, when we were 7, and under the tree Allison's pile of presents towered nearly twice as high as mine. But perhaps the clearest sign was the way they looked at her. Eyes filled with pride, with expectations. And the way they looked at me, as if I were just an afterthought. Allison was always the favorite, whether it was birthdays, clothes, or compliments when guests came over. Even in family photos, Mom always positioned her front and center, dressed in expensive dresses with perfect curls, while I stood off to the side in a last-minute, bargain bin outfit. Any summer job. They weren't cruel, exactly, they just didn't need me. And I spent my entire childhood trying to understand why. I never thought I was that different from Allison when we were little. We had the same soft brown hair, the same green eyes as Dad. But somehow, she always seemed to shine brighter. Or maybe, she was simply placed in the light, while I remained in the shadows. I first noticed it when we were about 5. Mom took us shopping for new fall clothes. I had been so excited when I saw a pair of blue sneakers that I absolutely loved, but when Mom glanced at the price tag, she shook her head. "Too expensive, Emily, we need to save money." I nodded even though I didn't fully understand what saving money meant at the time. But just a few minutes later when she stopped at another rack and picked out a brand new pair of Nike sneakers for Allison, something inside me shifted. "But you said we needed to save," I said. Mom didn't even look up. "Allison needs good shoes for gym class." "You don't?" I didn't argue, I just lowered my head, accepted the clearance rack shoes, and told myself they weren't that bad. But inside, something unfamiliar took root. A small stone dropped into the still water of my mind, sending out the first ripples. The difference became even clearer during the holidays. I remember Christmas when we were 6. The night before, Allison and I hung our stockings by the fireplace, giggling with excitement for Santa's arrival. But the next morning, as we ran downstairs, I noticed it immediately. Allison's stack of presents was taller than me. Mine? A small, neat pile, in the corner. I swallowed the lump in my throat, telling myself, it's not about the number. It's about the thought. But, as Allison tore open box after box, Barbie dolls, a dollhouse, a set of expensive art supplies. I unwrapped a cheap plastic doll and a coloring book. "Do you like it, Emily?" Dad asked as I pulled out my final gift. A plain gray sweater, clearly bought in a last-minute rush. I smiled, even though it wasn't entirely genuine. "Yeah, I love it." But when I looked over at Allison, I saw Mom helping her tie ribbons in her hair, admiring her brand new princess dress, telling her how beautiful she looked. Nobody even noticed me. When Allison turned 6, Mom took her to a salon to get her ears pierced. I remember staring at her sparkling new earrings, a childish envy bubbling inside me. "I want to get mine pierced too," I said. Mom shook her head without hesitation. "Earrings wouldn't suit you, Emily, you wouldn't like them." I didn't understand, how did she know what I'd like if I'd never even tried? Then, when Mom signed Allison up for ballet lessons, I was so excited. I wanted to wear a pink tutu, to spin on the polished wooden floors just like her. But when I asked, Mom just shook her head. We can't afford for both of you to take lessons. But there was always money for Allison. If she wanted something, Mom found a way. Gymnastics, piano, swimming. Allison had the chance to experience everything, while I was always left on the sidelines, watching in silence. I tried not to care. I told myself maybe I didn't really want those things. But at night, as I stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars on our ceiling, Allison's side, always shining brighter than mine, I realized favoritism wasn't just about material things. It was in the little details. The ones people didn't even notice. And that was what hurt the most. I always hoped that once I started school, my world would change. That I wouldn't be the forgotten child or Allison's shadow anymore. I thought maybe teachers would see me, classmates would treat me fairly, and maybe, just maybe, my parents would finally realize that I mattered too. But I was wrong. On the first morning of school, Mom took us outside for pictures. Allison and I wore identical uniforms. Plaid skirts, white blouses, navy cardigans. For the first time, I felt like we were truly twins. Equal. But then Mom raised her phone, tilted her head toward Allison, and said, "Listen, turn your head a little. Yes, just like that, now smile, perfect." I stood beside them, waiting, but Mom just checked the picture and put her phone away. Not a single photo with me as the focus. I told myself it was just an oversight. But as we stepped into school, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a pattern that would never end. After our first class, I saw Mom's car parked by the school gate. I hurried toward it, but before I could reach the door, she turned to Allison, her face lighting up. "Ready for ballet class, sweetheart?" I stared at her, waiting. But she barely glanced at me. "Emily, go straight home and finish your homework." I didn't know why I was surprised. This was how it always went. Monday through Friday, Mom took Allison to extracurriculars. Ballet, piano, painting, swimming lessons on the weekends. And me? I walked home alone, did my homework in an empty house, listening only to the ticking clock and the distant sounds of the neighbors outside. At first I thought if I worked hard enough they would notice me. I spent hours perfecting my handwriting, doing extra math problems, reading ahead in literature class so I could answer every question the teacher asked. I started getting perfect scores on my tests. But it didn't change anything. One evening, after Mom and Allison returned from ballet, I ran up to them, holding out my math test. "Mom, I got a perfect score," I said excitedly, handing her the paper. She glanced at it for barely a second before turning to Allison. "Sweetheart, what did you learn in ballet today?" "I learned how to do a triple spin. My teacher said I did amazing," Allison beamed. Mom clapped her hands, her face glowing with pride. "I knew it. My little star is so talented." I stood there, still holding my test paper, feeling nothing but emptiness. By the time I turned 12, I had stopped expecting recognition from my parents. I just kept my head down, studying in silence, trying to ignore the constant feeling of being left behind. But then, one night, I heard something I could never forget. It was late. I had stayed up reading in my room. My door wasn't fully closed, and through the crack I heard my parents talking downstairs in the living room. "Do you ever think we made a mistake?" Dad's voice was low. "A mistake?" Mom sounded irritated. "The kids. I mean, Allison is wonderful, but do you ever think two was too many?" Silence. My heart pounded in my chest. "Of course," Mom whispered. "Allison is everything we could have hoped for in a child. But Emily, she's just there. There's nothing special about her." My hands clenched the edge of my bed. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. I had always known they didn't love me the way they loved Allison. But hearing them say it, confirming they had never even wanted me, was like a knife straight to my heart. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in my life, I stopped hoping. From the night I overheard my parents say they never wanted me, something inside me changed. Before, I had tried to get Mom's attention, to earn Dad's praise, to carve out a place for myself in this family. But now I understood. No matter what I did, they would never change. They had long ago decided that Allison was their pride, the only child they truly needed. I couldn't change them, but I could change myself. And that's exactly what I decided to do. I no longer hoped for my parents' love, but I still had my mind. If I couldn't win their approval, I would win something else. Success. I threw myself into my studies. If the teacher assigned 3 chapters, I read 5. If an essay required 1 page of analysis, I wrote 3, with airtight arguments. I joined academic clubs, competed on the debate team, and won every academic competition I entered. Slowly, my teachers began to notice me. "Emily, your essay on the American dream was truly exceptional," my English teacher remarked one day. "Emily always demonstrates excellent logical reasoning," my math teacher praised in front of the class. Every time I heard those words, I felt stronger. I didn't need my parents' recognition. I could prove my worth on my own. But not everyone was happy about it. Allison was used to being the center of attention, but now, there was something she couldn't have: the admiration of our teachers. I saw the irritation in her eyes every time I was praised, the frustration in her voice when I won first place in a competition. "That's so boring," she muttered when she saw me holding a gold medal. "Who even cares?" But I knew Allison cared. And I knew Mom cared too. Not because she was proud of me, but because she couldn't stand seeing Allison overshadowed. It all came to a breaking point on a Monday afternoon. We had just finished an important exam, and when the teacher announced the scores, I ranked first in the class, with a perfect score. Allison, sitting right beside me, barely managed an average grade. That night at dinner, Mom was unusually quiet, but I could feel the tension in the air. And the next morning, as I walked through the school hallway, I saw her standing with the principal. "Principal Dawson, I'm very concerned," her voice rang out, loud enough for me and several students nearby to hear. "The teachers here seem to have a clear bias. I can't help but notice that my daughter, Allison, is being treated unfairly. Meanwhile, Emily gets all the praise." I froze. I could not believe my mother was doing this. The principal, ever professional, responded in a calm voice. "Mrs. Carter, the students' grades accurately reflect their abilities. There is no favoritism here." But my mother refused to accept that. She argued, growing more insistent, but in the end, when she realized she couldn't change anyone's mind, she stormed off, her face flushed with anger. Allison stepped out of the office right after, a smug expression on her face. "Mom's not going to let this go," she whispered, as she walked past me. But I didn't care. I didn't need Mom's approval. I just needed to keep moving forward. I was exhausted from having to beg my parents for pocket money, only to watch them hand Allison large bills without a second thought. So when I turned 16, I decided to earn my own money. I got a job at a small cafe near our house. It wasn't glamorous, brewing coffee, wiping tables, cleaning up. But I loved the independence. I loved having coworkers who actually valued me. Loved the way customers smiled and thanked me when I brought them their drinks. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a place, however small, in a world that didn't revolve around Allison. But of course that didn't sit well with her. "I can't believe you're actually working as a waitress," she scoffed one morning when she saw me in my cafe uniform. "That's so pathetic." I just shrugged. "Good," I said, not even pretending to care about her insults. "I have no desire to live extravagantly like you." Allison glared at me, but for the first time, I didn't feel afraid or hurt. I was building a life of my own, and I knew This was only the beginning. I always thought my mother's side of the family didn't exist. Growing up, I never once heard Mom mention my maternal grandparents. No pictures, no letters, no holiday phone calls. When I asked, she always gave the same curt response. "They're part of our lives." No one dared to question it further, and over time, I simply accepted that they were either dead or not worth remembering. But then, one day, I discovered the truth. That night, I came home from my cafe shift. As I passed by Mom's office, I heard her voice. Sharp, irritated. "I told you, I don't need anything from you, stop calling me." A long silence followed before she spoke again, her tone lower but just as cold. "I built a better life without you, don't try to crawl back in." Then came the slam of the phone, so loud that I flinched. I stood frozen outside the door, my heart pounding. Who was she talking to? I had never seen her so rattled before. And from what I had just heard, there was only one possibility. It had to be my grandparents. Curiosity gnawed at me all night. The next morning, while Mom and Allison were out shopping, I searched through her office. Among stacks of files and business documents, I found an old notebook, its brown leather cover worn with age. Flipping through the pages, I stopped when I spotted a handwritten address. Right next to the words, "Do not contact." I sat down, my pulse quickening. It was an address in the next town over, not far at all. And I knew exactly what I had to do. That afternoon, instead of heading to work, I took the bus to the address in the notebook. I didn't know what to expect. A rundown house, a shabby neighborhood. But when the bus stopped, I was stunned. In front of me stood a charming, well-kept house with a neatly trimmed lawn, vibrant flower beds, and a pristine white picket fence. There was no sign that this was the home of people my mother had deemed not worth contacting. I walked up to the door and took a deep breath before knocking. Within seconds, the door opened. The woman standing before me had silver hair neatly pinned back, warm brown eyes filled with surprise. Behind her, an older man with thin glasses stood up from his chair, studying me intently. "And you are?" I swallowed hard, my voice trembling as I spoke. "I'm Emily Carter." The woman's eyes widened. The man mumbled something under his breath as they both froze, staring at me. "Oh my God," she whispered, covering her mouth with her hand. "It's her. It's our granddaughter." Before I could react, she pulled me into a tight embrace. They ushered me inside, seating me on a velvet-upholstered burgundy couch. Before I could even ask a question, she started crying. "We never thought we'd get to meet you," she said, gripping my hands. "We tried to reach out, but your mother, she never let us." "Wait," I asked, my chest tightening. "Why did she cut you out of her life?" The old man sighed. "Because your mother always wanted a more glamorous life. When she married your father, she felt ashamed that we weren't as wealthy as his family." I clenched my fists. Had my mother really erased an entire part of our family just because of that? But before my anger could rise, my grandmother spoke again, her voice soft but firm. "My dear, there's something you should know." She glanced at my grandfather before turning back to me, her expression filled with quiet mystery. "We're not poor." I blinked. "What?" My grandfather chuckled, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "We invested in technology years ago. Now let's just say we're quite comfortable financially. But we never wanted a lavish life. We love this home, this life." I sat there, speechless. My mother had abandoned them because she thought they weren't good enough, when in reality, they might be wealthier than my parents? My grandmother squeezed my hand gently. "But none of that matters. What matters is that you're here now, and you always have a family here, Emily." For the first time in a long time, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. And I knew this was only the beginning. I had always known my place in this family. I wasn't the pride. I wasn't the cherished child. But even though I had accepted that truth, I still wasn't prepared for how brutally obvious they would make it on my graduation day. Graduating from high school should have been a milestone. A moment to celebrate my achievements, my hard work, my transition into adulthood. But in the Carter family, it was just another event for Allison. From the early morning hours, Mom fussed over Allison's outfit, carefully steaming the cream-colored silk dress she had specially bought for the ceremony. Dad hovered around, taking endless photos of her from every angle, showering her with praise about how perfect she looked. And me? I quietly put on the simple dress I had bought for myself with my own hard-earned money. No one even asked if I needed help. At the ceremony, when the principal announced my name as valedictorian, a sparse round of applause echoed through the auditorium. I stood on stage, scanning the family section. My parents clapped half-heartedly, but within seconds, they turned back to their conversation with Allison, admiring her dress. But when Allison's name was called, just as an ordinary graduate, my parents jumped to their feet, clapping loudly as if she had just won an Olympic gold medal. I pressed my lips together, gripping my diploma tightly. By now I shouldn't have been hurt anymore. But somehow, it still stung. The next morning I woke up with a fragile, lingering hope. Just for once, maybe they would acknowledge me the way they did Allison. Instead, I got a slap in the face. "Emily, I have wonderful news," Mom chirped as she packed a suitcase. I glanced around the living room. Allison was trying on new sunglasses. Dad was checking plane tickets on his phone. A bad feeling crept into my stomach. "We're going to Hawaii to celebrate graduation," Mom announced, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I blinked. "We?" Mom hesitated for a second before quickly returning to packing. "I mean your dad, Allison, and me. You understand, don't you? Someone has to stay home to watch the house. And you have your cafe job too." It felt like someone had just punched me in the gut. "You mean, the three of you are going and I'm staying behind?" My voice came out hoarse. Mom sighed, as if I was being unreasonable. "Emily, don't be dramatic. It's not like you love the beach anyway. Besides, you can use this time to work extra shifts and prepare for college." I turned to Dad. He didn't even look at me, just muttered absent-mindedly, "Your mother's right, don't be selfish." Then I turned to Allison, who was smirking. "Oh, don't worry, sweetheart," she cooed, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I'll send you lots of pictures." The next day I stood by the door, watching as the taxi carried them away. Allison waved at me like she pitied me. As the car disappeared from view, a surge of anger flooded through me. They had left me behind. They had never truly considered me part of the family. And I couldn't take it anymore. My hands trembled as I picked up my phone and dialed my grandmother's number. "Grandma, they're gone," I said, my voice shaking. "They left me behind." On the other end of the line, she took a deep breath. "My love, come here right now. We're throwing you the real graduation party you deserve." I left home immediately. When I arrived, my grandparents had set up a small party in their backyard. A "Congratulations Emily" banner hung on the fence, and colorful balloons shimmered in the late afternoon sun. But what truly shocked me was the car parked in front of the house. A brand new silver Mercedes C-Class gleaming under the golden light. I froze. Is My grandfather smiled and held up a small keyring, offering it to me. "This is your graduation gift, Emily. You've worked so hard, and we wanted you to have a strong start for your future." I couldn't speak. Tears burned in my eyes as I looked at them. These two people, who had welcomed me with open arms, despite barely knowing me. They didn't need a reason to love me. They loved me simply because I was their granddaughter. For the first time in my life, I truly felt like I belonged to a family. I clenched the car keys in my hand, knowing this wasn't just a gift. It was a message. I didn't need them anymore. A black taxi rolled onto the street, coming to a sharp stop in front of the house. Through the window, I saw my parents and Allison step out. Their arms laden with designer shopping bags, light jackets draped over their shoulders. They looked refreshed from their Hawaiian vacation. Sun-kissed skin, sleek hair, and Allison snapping yet another selfie on her phone. But then, everything froze when my mother's gaze landed on the Mercedes C-Class parked neatly in the driveway. I looked up, waiting for her to speak. At that point, she dried limitless and walked home, ever so quietly. She stiffened, taking a step back. Allison, too distracted, walked right into her, and when she looked up, her blue eyes went wide as if she had just seen something impossible. "The hell is this?" Allison shrieked, her voice shrill. My father frowned, his eyes shifting from the car to me, standing on the porch with my arms crossed, watching them like I'd been waiting for this reaction. "Whose car is this?" His voice was cold. I twirled the keys around my finger, letting a slow smile spread across my face. "Mind." My mother gasped, as if she had just taken a punch to the stomach. "Yours?" Her voice wavered. "Where did you get the money for this?" Leaning casually against the doorframe, I savored every second of this moment. "Grandma and Grandpa gave it to me. Graduation gift." The air froze. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. Then, my mother let out a forced, breathless laugh. But there was panic in her eyes. "Grandparents? You mean, my parents?" I nodded. "Yes, the ones you cut off because you thought they weren't wealthy enough for your perfect life." My father's head snapped toward my mother, his expression shifting from confusion to suspicion. "Lisa, you told me they were poor." My mother pressed her lips together, but Allison couldn't hold it in. "Wait!" She pointed a finger at me, eyes flashing. "Our grandparents are alive, and they have money?" I shrugged. "Not just alive, they're actually very successful. They invested in tech years ago. Now, let's just say, they're doing quite well." My mother's face drained of color, her manicured fingers gripping her designer handbag so tightly her knuckles turned white. But almost instantly she composed herself, forcing a warm, fake smile onto her face. "Emily, I think we should sit down and talk. After all, family is family, right? I'm so happy you got to reconnect with them. I've missed them too." I nearly laughed at how fast she switched gears. But before I could respond, she continued, her voice syrupy sweet. "And you know, Allison is starting college soon. She really needs a good car to get around. Don't you think it would only be fair if they helped her too?" I stared at her. I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. My father nodded in agreement, and Allison actually held out her hand, as if she was already expecting me to hand over the keys. I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. "No." I said the word slowly, letting it sink in. "This car is mine, and no one is taking it from me." My mother's face darkened instantly. "Emily, you cannot be this selfish. Do you really think you deserve this more than Allison?" I tilted my head, locking eyes with her. "Yes, I do." The tension in the air was thick, and I could feel the anger simmering beneath my mother's skin. But before she could explode, I calmly reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope. "One more thing." I slid out a letter and held it up for them to see. A Princeton acceptance letter. The house fell silent. My parents froze. Allison's mouth dropped open. "I got a full scholarship," I said smoothly. "So, in a few days, I'll be leaving. And I won't be coming back." My mother staggered, as if my words had physically shoved her backward. "Oh, I can," I cut her off. "And I will." Allison finally snapped out of her shock, stepping in front of me. "You can't do this, you can't just leave, you're my sister." I met her gaze head on. "Oh? I thought I was just a nobody in this house." For the first time in her life, Allison had nothing to say. I turned on my heel and walked toward my Mercedes. Opening the driver's door, I slid into the seat and started the engine. As I glanced up, I saw my mother open her mouth, as if she wanted to say something. But she didn't. She just stood there, watching me drive away. My father said nothing. Allison stood frozen in place, her expression a mix of shock and fury. I pulled out of the driveway, leaving behind years of neglect, rejection, and invisibility. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Emily Carter's story is not just a journey of escaping favoritism and neglect. It's a testament to the power of perseverance and independence. She didn't try to change her parents or seek validation from those who didn't appreciate her. Instead, she chose to create her own value, finding love and support from those who truly cared. In real life, no one can control where they are born, but everyone has the right to choose how they live and the path to success. Sometimes, walking away from toxicity is the first step toward finding true happiness. Emily Carter's story makes us reflect. Is family truly where we belong, or do we sometimes have to carve our own path? What do you think about Emily's choices? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories. I am Vivian, stepping into this world just a few breaths behind my twin sister, yet I was born with a congenital deformity in my leg, a small gap that seemed to separate our two fates. There were nights when I lay awake, wondering if destiny had already decided that I would always be a faint shadow next to her radiant glow. Have you ever felt abandoned by your own family, like an unwanted thing no one cared to pick up? I have, and this story will reveal why that feeling has never left me. Listen closely, because what I am about to tell you is not just about injustice, it is a wound that will never heal. My sister Sophia and I were born in a white wooden house nestled in the quiet suburbs of Oregon, where endless barley fields stretched beneath the gray sky. Our parents, Margaret and Henry Carter, were the epitome of middle-class America. My mother, an interior designer, always appeared with her golden hair tied high and her polished heels clicking against the floor, as if every day was a fashion show. My father ran a small auto repair shop, often covered in grease, yet carrying the calm demeanor of a man devoted to his family. From the outside, we looked like the perfect picture of family happiness. Until you realized that in that picture, I was nothing more than a faint, hurriedly drawn smudge in the background. The favoritism began when we were just 4 years old. The age when everything between twin sisters should have been identical, like 2 drops of water. But no, Sophia was always the shining star in our parents' eyes. I still remember the first time I truly noticed it, when our mother took us shopping at the local mall. Sophia walked out of the store in brand new pastel pink Adidas sneakers, glittering under the lights, while I trailed behind in old sandals from the discount bin. "Vivian, you don't need new shoes, your feet grow too slowly," my mother said, her voice gentle but cutting, then turned to stroke Sophia's hair. "And you, Sophia, you have to look your best for your friend's birthday party." I stood there, clutching the plastic bag containing my cheap sandals, feeling as if I had just been cast out of my own family's world. The differences didn't stop at clothes. Our shared birthday was the clearest proof of all. When we turned 7, my mother threw a grand backyard party, complete with balloons, a 3-tier cake, and even a clown for entertainment. Sophia was dressed in a sparkling turquoise princess gown, while I was given a faded gray jumpsuit my mother had pulled from the bottom of the closet. When it was time to cut the cake, Sophia's slice was always bigger, topped with extra frosting and fresh strawberries, while mine was a tiny, misshapen piece, as if someone had hurriedly chopped it off just to be done with it. "Sophia loves sweets, you should let your sister have more," my father said, his deep voice firm yet final, before turning to smile at Sophia as she proudly showed off her new gift. A pricey American Girl doll. I, on the other hand, received an old stuffed bear from a thrift store, its fur matted and one eye missing. Even extracurricular activities became Sophia's stage. When she was 8, my mother enrolled her in ballet, followed by violin lessons, and every week she was driven to the cultural center with a beaming smile. Once, I hesitantly asked, "Mom, can I learn ballet too?" She glanced at me, her gaze cold, as if I had just said something ridiculous. "Vivian, we only have enough money for one. Sophia has talent, you should just stay home and read books." I swallowed the lump in my throat, nodded, and quietly retreated to my corner with the tattered old book I had read dozens of times. Meanwhile, Sophia twirled in her new ballet shoes, our parents' proud eyes following her every move, as if I didn't exist. The family photos lining the living room wall told this story more clearly than words ever could. Sophia always stood in the center, beaming in expensive dresses, while I was pushed to the edge of the frame, my sad eyes hidden behind messy hair. Once, I overheard my mother bragging to a neighbor on the phone. "My Sophia is such a treasure, so beautiful and talented." Not a single mention of me, as if I were nothing more than a ghost in my own home. These small wounds piled up, like pebbles weighing heavy in my heart. I told myself I didn't need fancy dresses or new shoes. But what I longed for, my parents' attention, their love, was something I would never receive. Sophia was the light, and I was just the forgotten shadow. Time passed, but the distance between Sophia and me never narrowed. It only grew wider, sharp as a blade cutting into me each day. Family celebrations, from birthdays to Christmas, became Sophia's stage, where I was nothing more than a forgotten spectator standing at the edges. My parents, Margaret and Henry, seemed to forget they had twin daughters. In their eyes, only Sophia shined, while I was nothing but a speck of dust, not even worth wiping away. Our 10th birthday is a memory I can never erase. My mother transformed our backyard into a wonderland with crimson ribbons dangling from trees and a dessert table overflowing with chocolate-frosted cupcakes. As always, Sophia wore a regal purple silk dress embroidered with flowers, looking like a princess straight out of a fairy tale. I, on the other hand, was dressed in an old, worn-out sweater my mother had pulled from the back of the closet, a dull brown that no one even noticed. When the guests arrived, my mother pulled Sophia into the spotlight, her voice filled with pride. "Everyone, look how beautiful my Sophia is today." I stood silently by the wooden fence, my fingers gripping the slats, watching as all eyes turned to her in admiration. My father was busy taking pictures, the camera lens focused only on Sophia as she blew out the candles, while I was merely an accidental blur in the background, captured only when I reached in for a piece of cake. The family photos hanging in the hallway only reinforced this injustice. In one picture taken at a nearby park when we were 9, Sophia stood in the center, clutching a bright red balloon, her smile glowing under the sun. My parents held her close, while I was pushed to the side, nearly hidden behind an oak tree, my lost eyes unnoticed by anyone. Once, I heard my mother bragging to our neighbor over the fence. "My Sophia is a little prodigy, she's only 10 and already performing violin solos at the school festival." I stood there clutching my sketchbook that my art teacher had just praised, but my mother never even glanced at it. "What about Vivian?" the neighbor asked. My mother let out a dry laugh. "Oh, she's just ordinary, nothing special." I started working harder at school, hoping that perfect grades would finally make my parents notice me. In elementary school, I buried myself in assignments, stayed up late solving math problems, and read until my eyes burned. When I was 11, I brought home an award for placing first in the school science competition. My father glanced at it, gave a half-hearted nod. "That's good, Vivian." Then turned to Sophia. "Tell me about your violin practice today, sweetheart. What did your teacher say?" Sophia beamed, her voice bright. She said, "I'm the best in the group. Next week, I get to perform a solo." My mother placed a hand on her shoulder, her eyes shining. "That's amazing, Sophia, you make me so proud." My award sat alone on the table, untouched, forgotten, never picked up a second time. All my efforts were meaningless compared to Sophia's achievements, though sometimes I wondered if they were truly as grand as our parents made them out to be. When Sophia brought home a bronze medal from the district ballet competition, my mother threw a special dinner, with roasted beef and homemade pudding. "My daughter is a star," she exclaimed, hugging Sophia so tightly I thought she might suffocate. At the same time, I had just been selected for my school's debate team, a rare accomplishment for someone our age. But when I shared the news, my father merely muttered, Good, but you need to try harder. Now go congratulate Sophia." I swallowed the lump in my throat, retreated to my room, and shut the door to keep the laughter from the dining room from cutting deeper into my heart. The holidays only made me feel more like an outsider in my own home. Christmas at 12, the tree in the living room was overflowing with presents, most of them for Sophia. A delicate music box, hand-knitted gloves, and a shimmering silver necklace. I received a plain paper notebook and a cheap ballpoint pen. "Vivian, you don't like big gifts anyway, right?" my mother said, her voice light but sharp, before turning to help Sophia open her music box. I nodded, forced a smile, but inside I wanted to scream. I deserved love too. That injustice kept growing, like a fire burning quietly inside me. But one day, when I accidentally overheard my parents talking in the kitchen, everything became clearer than ever. My father's voice was low. "Sophia is everything we hoped for." "But Vivian," my mother interrupted. "She makes us look bad, Henry. Maybe we should just let her figure out her own life. We don't need to be too involved." My heart stopped. The question hung in my mind. What would it take for them to see that I wasn't just some foolish, useless child? The night I heard my parents whispering in the kitchen, something inside me shattered. Their words were like a hammer smashing the last hope I had ever held on to. I, Vivian, 12 years old, stood frozen in the hallway, fists clenched, silent tears falling onto the cold wooden floor. At that moment, I understood. My parents' love was not something I could beg for or fight for. It belonged to Sophia. And to them, I was nothing more than an afterthought. I turned my back on that pain and made a decision. If I couldn't have their hearts, I would carve my own path. With or without my flawed legs. I threw myself into studying with the hunger of someone desperate to prove themselves. Night after night, in my tiny room under the dim glow of my desk lamp, I solved complex math problems, memorized the periodic table, and wrote essays until my hands ached. I stopped bringing home certificates. They were meaningless in the face of my parents' indifference. Instead, I kept them tucked away in my drawer, like secret medals proving my worth. At school, I began to shine. At 13, I ranked first in the school math competition, surpassing students 2 grades above me. Mrs. Parker, with her sharp eyes and silver hair, called me to the front of the class, her voice full of pride. "Vivian, you have a rare talent. This solution is outstanding." I gave a faint smile, tasting the bitterness of victory. Because at home, no one would care. But Sophia did. She began watching me with narrowed eyes, her expression tinged with irritation. Every time a teacher praised me, I would hear her pencil tapping aggressively against the desk, as if she wanted to stab through the wood. One day, in science class, when I was chosen to explain a chemistry experiment, Sophia scoffed under her breath, just loud enough for me to hear. "You probably memorized the answer beforehand. You're not actually smart." I turned to her, my voice cold. "If that's what you think, why don't you try beating me?" Her face flushed red and she fell silent, but I knew the fire of jealousy inside her had just been lit. That night, I sat on the staircase, listening as Sophia cried to our mother in the living room. "Mom, the teachers hate me. They keep praising Vivian, making me look bad in front of the whole class." Her voice trembled, full of resentment. My mother's reply was sharp as scissors. "What? How dare they? Sophia, you're the best, everyone knows that." I gritted my teeth, waiting to see what she would do. The next morning, my mother stormed into the school, her high heels clacking angrily against the hallway floor, her perfume thick in the air. I hid behind a bookshelf in the library and watched her march into the principal's office, her voice thundering. "I want to know why the teachers here are treating my Sophia unfairly." Mrs. Parker remained eerily calm. "Mrs. Carter, I can show you the grades. Vivian has consistently been at the top. As for Sophia, she needs to put in more effort." My mother cut her off. "Are you saying my Sophia isn't good enough? You're clearly biased toward Vivian." When she got home, I heard her ranting to my father over dinner. "These teachers are idiots. They dare to say Sophia isn't as good as Vivian. They're humiliating her just to uplift Vivian." My father growled. "Then that school is garbage. Sophia is the one who deserves attention. Vivian, she's nothing special. Maybe they just pity her because of her disability." I stood outside the door, my heart tightening. They could defend Sophia all they wanted, but they didn't care how much their words cut me. But I knew the truth. I was better, and no one could take that away from me. My achievements kept stacking up. At 14, I won first place in the statewide essay competition, my piece on climate change, published in the local newspaper. Mr. Harris, my English teacher, patted my shoulder. "Vivian, you have a bright future. Don't let anyone hold you back." I nodded, pride swelling inside me. Even though I knew that at home my mother would throw the newspaper into the trash the moment she saw my name on it. Sophia, however, grew more resentful. One day, she slammed my notebook onto the floor, her voice seething. "You think you're so great? I'll show you that I'm the one who deserves all the praise." I picked up my notebook, smirking. "Go ahead and try, Sophia." But the thing that intrigued me the most came on a rainy night when I accidentally overheard my parents arguing in the garage. My father's voice was heavy. "If Vivian keeps this up, she's going to surpass Sophia. What are we going to do?" My mother's voice was chillingly calm. "Don't worry, Henry, we'll find a way." Find a way? To stop me? What were they planning to do to me? When I turned 16, I decided that if my parents didn't need me, then I wouldn't need to rely on them either. The mocking words, the disdainful glances from my mother and Sophia, had pushed me to my limit. I wanted to stand on my own feet, no matter how thorny the road ahead was, no matter how people ridiculed my imperfect hands. On a drizzly afternoon in Oregon, I walked into Honey Bloom, a small bakery near my school, clutching a hastily written job application on lined paper. The owner, a middle-aged woman with curly red-dyed hair, peered at me over her round glasses. "Are you sure you want to work here, kid? This job is tough." I nodded, my voice firm. "I need the money and I don't mind the work." She smiled and handed me a pale yellow apron. "All right, you start tomorrow, Vivian." The job was anything but easy. I spent hours wiping tables, baking pastries, and brewing coffee, the scent of flour clinging to my hair, my hands burning from hot trays. But every dollar I earned was another brick in the foundation of my freedom. I no longer had to beg my mother for a few dollars to buy books, only to hear her sneer. "Vivian, what do you need money for? Sophia has real expenses." One morning as I tied my apron, getting ready for work, Sophia strolled past, holding a smoothie our mother had just made. She smirked. "Oh wow, are you planning to bake for the rest of your life? That's pathetic, I feel embarrassed for you." Mother stood beside her, hands on her hips, adding, "Vivian, stop making a fool of this family. Sophia has singing lessons to focus on. Don't bother her." I glanced at them, tightened my shoelaces, and replied coolly, "Don't worry, I don't need anyone to be embarrassed for me." But life wasn't just about the insults I had learned to ignore. One evening, as I cleared off my mother's desk to make space for my homework, I accidentally came across an old, worn leather notebook. Inside, under the heading, "No Contact," there was a handwritten address. Eleanor and Thomas Reed, 47 Pine Lane, Astoria. Astoria was over an hour away by bus, a small coastal town known for its tree-lined streets and ocean breeze. Then I remembered. Years ago, my mother had screamed into the phone, her voice filled with anger. "I don't want anything to do with you anymore, Mother. Living in that rundown house, you're an embarrassment to me." So these were my grandparents, the ones my mother had cut off, just because she saw them as poor and disgraceful. But I didn't hesitate. The next day, instead of going to the bakery, I got on a bus, clutching the scrap of paper with the address, my heart pounding as if it would leap out of my chest. When the bus stopped at Pine Lane, I stepped off, the salty sea breeze whipping through my hair. In front of me stood a small wooden house, its white paint peeling, but the front yard was alive with wildflowers in full bloom. I knocked, my breath catching in my throat. The door creaked open, revealing an elderly woman with silver hair tied low, her deep blue eyes filled with quiet wisdom, and an old man with steel-rimmed glasses, a folded newspaper in his hand. They stared at me, stunned, until I finally spoke. "I'm Vivian Carter. I think I'm your granddaughter." Eleanor clutched her chest, her voice trembling. "Oh my God, Thomas, it's her." Thomas stepped forward, his eyes glistening. "You look just like Margaret when she was young, but why are you here?" They pulled me inside, the warm scent of apple pie filling the cozy space. I told them about my mother, about Sophia, about the years of being forgotten. Eleanor took my hand, her wrinkled fingers surprisingly warm. "Vivian, you don't know how much we've longed to see you. Margaret cut us off, but we never forgot you." Thomas nodded, his voice steady. Here, your family, you're not anyone's shadow. From then on, I visited them often, lying to my mother that I was working night shifts at the bakery. They welcomed me with simple dinners, potato soup, toasted bread. But each meal was filled with a love I had never known from my parents. Eleanor taught me how to knit, while Thomas shared stories of his youth spent sailing off the coast. For the first time, I felt seen, truly loved. One afternoon, as I brought them a box of cookies I had baked myself, Eleanor hugged me and whispered, "You are the greatest gift we have, Vivian." But happiness never lasted without a storm. One evening as I washed dishes in their kitchen, the phone rang. Eleanor picked up, and her face went pale. "Margaret, yes, she's here with us." I froze, water running over my hands. My mother had found me. And what would happen now that she knew where I was? Graduation day arrived like a gust of wind over Oregon's barley fields, bringing with it a mix of joy and bitterness. I, Vivian, stood on the school auditorium stage, my deep blue gown flowing as my name was called. The valedictorian of my class. Applause filled the air, but from the family section, I only saw my parents, Margaret and Henry, silently nodding, their expressions unreadable. Then, when Sophia's name was called, despite her merely graduating with average grades, my parents leapt to their feet, cheering. "You're amazing, Sophia, we're so proud of you." As if she had just won a Nobel Prize. I pressed my lips together, gripping my diploma tight. I told myself that my achievements didn't need their validation. But deep down, a part of me still wished they would finally see me. The next morning, I walked downstairs feeling lighter, hoping that graduation might mark a new beginning. My mother stood in the kitchen, holding a coffee mug, an uncharacteristic smile playing on her lips. "Kids, we have some exciting news," she announced, her voice brimming with enthusiasm, as if she were announcing a lottery win. Sophia bounded down the stairs, her ponytail swinging, eyes sparkling. "What is it, Mom?" she chirped, bouncing around the table. My father entered, holding 3 plane tickets, grinning. "We're going on a summer vacation to California to celebrate Sophia's graduation. The beaches in Santa Barbara are waiting for us." My heart pounded, a flicker of hope sparking inside me. Maybe, just maybe, I was finally included in a family plan. But then, my mother turned to me, her voice sickly sweet. "Vivian, you'll stay home and watch the house, okay? We can't leave it unattended, and besides, you're busy with your baking job, aren't you?" Sophia giggled behind her hand. "Yeah, keep wiping those tables, sis. I'll send you lots of pictures." I stood frozen, as if someone had thrown a bucket of ice water in my face. "What? I just graduated, as valedictorian. Why am I not going?" I snapped, my hands trembling. My father frowned, replying curtly, "Sophia needs a vacation to relax after all her hard work. You're fine, staying home for a few weeks won't hurt you." My mother nodded, adding, "You're very smart, Vivian. That means you need to stay home and keep studying. Sophia deserves a break. She's exhausted." I turned away, running up to my room, swallowing the tears that threatened to fall. They didn't need me? Fine, I would prove I didn't need them either. The next morning, I stood by the front door, watching as the taxi carrying my parents and Sophia sped away, leaving behind a trail of dust. Sophia stuck her head out the window, waving smugly. "Goodbye, Vivian. Don't get jealous when you see my beach photos." I clenched my fists, then turned back into the house and picked up the phone. "Grandma, they left me behind," I said, my voice tight. Her response came immediately, warm yet firm. "Vivian, take the bus and come to us, we have a surprise for you." I packed a few clothes, my heart suddenly lighter, as if I had just shed a heavy burden. When the bus stopped in Astoria, I stepped off, the salty ocean breeze tugging at my hair. In front of my grandparents' house, I stopped in shock. A bright red Ford Mustang sat gleaming in the driveway under the sun. Eleanor and Thomas stood on the porch, my grandfather holding up a set of keys, his eyes twinkling. "This is your graduation gift, Vivian," he said in his deep, steady voice. My jaw dropped. "What? But how did you afford this?" Eleanor pulled me onto the living room couch, gripping my hands tightly. Listen, dear. After Margaret cut us off, we invested in a few small tech companies. Now they've grown and we're wealthier than your mother ever imagined. But we chose to live simply. We don't flaunt our money. I threw my arms around them, tears spilling down my cheeks. Not out of pain, but for the first time, out of happiness. I can't believe this. I always thought you. Thomas chuckled, cutting me off. We were just waiting for the moment you needed us most. That day, they threw me a small celebration. Apple pie, grilled meat, and a handwritten sign that read, "Congratulations, valedictorian Vivian." For the first time, I felt like the center of attention, not just a shadow. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed repeatedly, messages from Sophia. Photos of her lounging on the Santa Barbara beach, captioned, "Living like a princess, hope you're having fun at home." I glanced at the Mustang outside, smiled, and replied, "Congrats, sis." I found my own happiness, too. But as I set my phone down, Eleanor walked in, holding a thick envelope, her expression serious. "Vivian, there's something we need to talk about. Your mother just called back, and she knows you're here. It seems like she's planning something." For 2 weeks after my parents and Sophia left for California, I thrived in Astoria. The bright red Mustang became my companion, gliding along the coastal roads, carrying a freedom I had never known. I still worked at Honeybloom, but now, every dollar I earned was for my future, not to prove anything to anyone. Meanwhile, Sophia continued sending bragging photos, lounging by the pool, holding a cocktail on the beach, always with captions like, "This is the real life, hope you're enjoying yourself at home." I merely smirked, running my fingers over the leather steering wheel, knowing she had no idea that I had already broken free from the shadow they had caged me in. The day they returned, I was ready. I parked the Mustang right in front of our house in Oregon, its glossy red paint catching the sunlight, making it impossible to ignore. Inside, I sat in the living room, pretending to read, but my eyes stayed locked on the window. The taxi pulled up, kicking up a cloud of dust as it came to a stop. Sophia was the first to step out, tanned, carrying designer shopping bags, flashing a toothy grin. Mother followed, her blonde hair windblown, while my father dragged heavy suitcases, sweat glistening on his forehead. They chatted excitedly until my mother suddenly froze, her eyes locking onto the car. "Oh my God, what is that?" she shrieked, her voice rising like a siren, pointing at the Mustang as if it were an alien spaceship. Sophia bumped into her, nearly dropping her bags, her jaw hanging open. A new car? Who parked that here?" My father dropped the suitcases, his face flushing red from the heat and shock. "Vivian, get out here now," he barked. I stepped onto the porch, hands tucked in my pockets, and smirked. "What's wrong, Dad? You don't like my new car?" They turned to me, eyes burning with disbelief. "Your car?" Sophia screeched, stomping toward the Mustang like she wanted to kick it to pieces. "Where did you get the money for this? How much baking do you have to do to afford a car like this?" Mother stormed in, hands on her hips, voice sharp as a blade. "Vivian, don't lie to us. Who gave you the money? Did you steal from me?" I crossed my arms, my voice icy. "No one gave me anything. And I didn't steal. This is my graduation gift. From Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa Thomas. Surprised?" My mother's face turned pale, her hands trembling. "Your grandparents? Those two? But how?" My father stepped forward, his voice low but threatening. "You mean that Thomas and Eleanor? Those broke old folks I met years ago? Where the hell did they get money for a Mustang? Are you lying to me?" I pulled the keys from my pocket, twirling them between my fingers. "Believe it or not, they're richer than you think. They invested wisely, unlike some people who blow their money on vacations." Sophia lunged, grabbing my wrist. "Give me the keys. If it's a graduation gift, I should get one too. I deserve it more." I yanked my hand free, chuckling coldly. "Touch my car, Sophia, and see what happens. You just got back from California, what more do you want?" Mother screamed, her voice piercing. "Vivian, how dare you talk like that? Give Sophia the car, she deserves it more than you. You're just a baker, why do you need a luxury car? My father nodded. Exactly. Sophia is going to college. She needs a reliable vehicle. You can just walk? I stepped back, gripping the keys tightly. This is mine, and no one is taking it. Grandma and Grandpa gave it to me, not this family. My mother whipped around to my father, panic flashing in her eyes. Henry, call Eleanor, ask that woman where she got the money to spoil Vivian like this. My father snatched his phone, furiously dialing. When Thomas picked up, his voice came over the speaker, calm but sharp. Henry, long time no see. How do you like Vivian's car? Pretty, my father stammered. Where the hell did you get the money for a Mustang? Don't tell me you hit the lottery. Thomas laughed. Lottery? No need. I invested years ago, and now, I'm wealthier than you. Vivian deserves this. Unlike some people who only know how to abandon her. My mother snatched the phone, her voice suddenly syrupy sweet. Dad, it's been so long. Why don't I come visit? We should talk. As a family. Thomas's voice turned cold. No thanks, Margaret, we only welcome Vivian. Don't even think about coming for money. Click. The call ended. My mother stood there, ashen-faced, while Sophia screamed. Why does Vivian get everything? I can't stand her anymore. I strode to my car, opened the door, then turned back. Whether you stand me or not, that's your problem. But next time, don't expect me to be your shadow. As I revved the engine, my mother's voice shrieked behind me. Vivian, come back here. I'm not finished with you. But I drove off, leaving them gaping in my rearview mirror. I always thought that one day I would be free. Not in some grand romanticized way, but in a simple, ordinary sense. No more controlling phone calls from my mother. No more feeling overlooked. No more exhausting myself trying to prove my worth to a family that never truly saw me. But I haven't been able to do it. Freedom isn't as simple as a door swinging open once you're old enough, smart enough, or successful enough. It has to be taken. And I realized that the day I told my parents I was planning to buy a small house in the suburbs. A house just for me. I'm Rebecca, 31 years old, working in investment analysis. My career is stable, my income is comfortable enough that I don't have to worry about money. But if you ask my family, they would say I'm selfish, cold, and unwilling to help where it really matters. Why? Because I refuse to live according to the plans they set for me. I have an older sister, Melissa, 34. And if I'm the hard-working aunt, she's the dazzling butterfly. Always adored, praised, and favored. She's not wrong for taking advantage of that, but there's something deeply unfair about the fact that I always have to do more just to be acknowledged less. Melissa is married to Derek, a construction manager, and they have 3 kids. Ethan, Lila, 5, and little Max, 2. Their family lives in a cramped apartment, and almost every conversation I have with my parents revolves around how Melissa has it so hard. The kids need more space. Or how your sister is the one who really needs help. To me, parents aren't just the ones who gave birth to you. They're also the ones who decide the hierarchy in the family. And in their eyes, Melissa will always stand above me. Maybe I wouldn't care so much if I weren't the automatic choice whenever the family needed something. Need money? Rebecca will have it. Need someone to babysit? Rebecca can adjust her schedule. Need a listening ear for all of Melissa's problems with zero judgment? Of course, Rebecca. I had grown used to it. But what I couldn't accept was how they treated my life as nothing more than an extension of Melissa's. People might say I'm cold, but I'm not. I just can't live in a cycle where I am always the second choice. So, I made a plan of my own. For the past 7 years, I've been renting a small apartment from the parents of my best friend, Maggie. Because they trusted me, they let me pay half the market price, allowing me to save a significant amount of money. I'm not the type to spend recklessly. If anything, I'm extremely careful with my finances. I cook instead of eating out, take public transportation instead of driving, and hunt for every discount coupon I can find. People often tease me for being stingy, but I don't care. I know what I'm doing. And then that day finally came. The day I opened my savings account, looked at the numbers, and realized I had enough for a down payment on a house. I didn't want a luxurious mansion or a high-end condo. I wanted a place of my own. A place where I could work without interruptions. Where I could enjoy my mornings with a cup of coffee on the porch, and most importantly, a place where no one could suddenly claim it as theirs. And yet, from the moment I started browsing real estate listings, I felt something was terribly wrong. Not because I doubted my decision, but because I knew my family would never accept this. I don't know when I got used to being overlooked. Maybe it was from the moment I learned to compare, from those early years when I realized I was never the center of my family's world. It's not that I wasn't loved. It's that the love always came with conditions. And I was never the one who met those conditions. Melissa was different. She was the perfect child. Since she was little, she always knew how to attract attention, always received the best of what my parents had to give. I never resented her for it. Or at least, I used to think I didn't. But over time, little by little, those tiny cuts burrowed deeper, and the memories turned into scars that wouldn't fade. I remember Christmas when I was 8 years old. Melissa got a genuine American Girl doll, the kind every girl at school dreamed of having. I got a knockoff version, cheaper, with thin hair and eyes that couldn't blink like hers. I asked my mom why, and she just smiled, patting my head as if I should already understand the answer. "They're the same, sweetheart. What's the difference?" But they weren't the same. I realized that the next day, when Melissa brought her doll to school, showing it off to her friends, while mine was quickly forgotten on a shelf. When I was 16, the difference became clearer than ever. On her 16th birthday, Melissa was gifted a brand new Toyota Corolla, wrapped with a giant red bow on the hood. I still remember how excited my parents were as they led her to the driveway, their laughter ringing out as Melissa hugged them, screaming with joy. When I turned 16, I was given a car too. But it was my dad's old Ford, with over 150,000 miles on it. An engine that sometimes stalled in the middle of the road. "It still runs fine," Dad said. "I checked it." I didn't say anything, because I knew that if I complained, all I would get was my mother's disapproving look. "Rebecca, you're always too sensitive." They threw Melissa a lavish birthday party, with friends, a big cake, and even a private DJ. I remember standing at the edge of the yard watching her dance in the middle of her friends, the music blaring, the lights flashing. I didn't know what to call that feeling. Maybe sadness, maybe disappointment, or maybe I had just grown too used to it. When I graduated high school, I had hoped just once to have a moment where I was truly seen. Melissa had a grand graduation party in our backyard, with flowers, balloons, and catered food from an upscale restaurant. And me? I had a simple family dinner at home, with a brief explanation from my mother. "We have to save money, don't we?" And I understood. I understood that there would never be anything just for me. If I wanted something, I had to get it myself. So I did. I threw myself into my studies, applied for scholarships, and took on any part-time job I could find to cover my tuition. I couldn't rely on my parents for support the way Melissa could. When she went to college, my parents paid for everything. Her tuition, her rent, her living expenses, and even a monthly allowance. And me? I spent countless nights awake writing essays, applying for every bit of financial aid I could find, calculating every expense to make sure I wouldn't run out of money for food. And through it all, I kept telling myself, "It's okay. I'll take care of myself. I don't need anyone." And I did. Years later, when I landed a job in investment analysis, when I could fully support myself without asking anyone for help, I thought things would change. I thought that once I was successful, my parents would see me differently. But I was wrong. Because in their eyes, I was still the one who had to sacrifice. I just never expected that this time, they would want me to sacrifice my entire future. For Melissa. And I wasn't going to let that happen. I had spent nearly a decade preparing for this moment. Every paycheck I earned had a purpose. Every spending decision was carefully calculated. I didn't take extravagant trips. I didn't chase after expensive fashion trends. I didn't waste money on the luxuries that so many people my age took for granted. Because I had a plan. I didn't need a luxury mansion. I didn't need a high-rise apartment in the city. I wanted a small house in the countryside. A peaceful place to work, to rest, and most importantly, a space that was truly mine. When I checked my savings account last week, I knew the time had come. I had gone through hundreds of real estate listings, studied the market, calculated property taxes and all the related costs. And finally, I found the perfect house. A small cottage with a spacious porch, a garden, and an ideal workspace. It was about a 40-minute drive from the city, far enough to enjoy the quiet but still convenient when I needed to commute. I thought this would be the biggest milestone of my life. But what I hadn't anticipated was that my family would never accept this decision. Saturday dinner at my parents' house had always been an unspoken rule. I had never truly looked forward to these gatherings, but I also couldn't skip them. Not because I wanted to be there, but because I knew if I didn't show up, I would be criticized endlessly. I arrived at 5:05 p.m., just 5 minutes late, but I was immediately met with my mother's disapproving look. "Rebecca, you're late again." Her voice was gentle, but the discontent was clear. Melissa and Derek were already there, along with their 3 kids. Lila was running around the living room, Ethan was glued to his iPad, and Max was crying in Melissa's arms. As usual, Melissa looked exhausted but made sure everyone knew it. "Oh God, the kids are driving me crazy today." My father sat in his armchair, newspaper in hand, complaining about gas prices and inflation as if his words could change the economy. Derek was chewing on a piece of garlic bread, completely uninterested in anything happening around him. I sat down, trying to engage in the conversation, but when Melissa started talking about how their apartment was too small, how they couldn't keep living in such a cramped space, I realized this wasn't just another family dinner. "Rebecca, what about you?" My mother turned to me, as if just now remembering I was there. I could have lied. I could have kept quiet about my decision. But in a moment of weakness, I told the truth. "I've been looking at houses. I might buy one in the next few months." The room suddenly fell into an eerie silence. Melissa stared at me, her fork frozen mid-air. My father lowered his newspaper. Derek stopped chewing. Even the 3 kids, as if sensing something unusual, suddenly fell silent. "What did you just say?" my mother asked, as if she couldn't believe her ears. "I'm looking for a house to buy, a small one in the suburbs." "The suburbs?" Melissa's voice shot out before my mother could react. "Why would you do that? Aren't you still living in Maggie's apartment?" "I've been renting that place for a long time. It's time for me to have a place of my own." I tried to keep my voice calm, but an uneasy feeling was creeping in. No one in the room looked happy. No one congratulated me. They just stared, as if I had just said something completely unacceptable. "Rebecca, you can't be serious," my father finally spoke, his voice laced with doubt. "Why not?" "Because it doesn't make sense," my mother cut in. "You're still young. Why would you want to live all alone in the suburbs? There's no one around. What if something happens?" "Mom, I'm not a child anymore. I want a quiet place to live and work." She blinked, then turned to Melissa. "What do you think about this?" I stiffened. I didn't need Melissa to weigh in on my life. She shrugged, but I caught the calculating look in her eyes. "Are you sure, Rebecca? A city apartment would suit you much better." "No, I want a small house in the suburbs." The air in the room grew tense even as dinner continued. Conversation went on, but the shift was undeniable. My parents exchanged subtle glances. Melissa kept stealing looks at Derek. And that's when I realized they were plotting something. I didn't know what they had expected from me, but it certainly wasn't this. And then, a thought crossed my mind, a thought that sent a chill down my spine. Had they already made plans for a house I hadn't even bought yet? A week after that tense dinner, I had nearly forgotten the cryptic looks from my parents and Melissa. Work kept me busy, investment analysis projects took up all my time. In the evenings, I kept browsing listings, filtering through real estate options, reviewing tax and mortgage details. I thought everything was going according to plan. I was wrong. On Monday morning, while I was buried in a virtual meeting, my phone buzzed non-stop. My mother's name flashed on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. The moment the meeting ended, my phone rang again. For the third time. What could possibly be so urgent? I answered, barely getting a word out before my mother's excited voice filled the line. Rebecca, you finally picked up. I have amazing news. I found the perfect house for you. I blinked, unease settling in. You found a house for me? Yes, you won't believe it, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I sat down, forcing patience. Mom, I didn't ask you to find a house for me, I can do that myself. Don't dismiss it so quickly, Martha. You know, my friend from church just told me about this house and it's too good to pass up. It's spacious, 5 bedrooms, a big backyard, close to a school, even has a play area for kids. I felt my heart sink. Mom, I don't need a house that big. Rebecca, you have to think ahead. One day you'll have a family, children. Why waste your money on some tiny house in the suburbs when you could have a real home? And this one is right by St. Mary's School, just a short walk away. I clenched my teeth. Mom, I already told you, I want a small, quiet house. Not a home built for a big family. Don't be so selfish, Rebecca. Her voice turned sharp instantly. You need to think ahead. This house is the best option, and the owner's looking to sell quickly. If you act fast, you'll get a better deal. I already told Martha you'd be viewing the house on Saturday. I shot up from my chair feeling completely cornered. You did what? I promised Martha. You have no right to make that decision for me. The air suddenly felt stifling, my heartbeat pounded in my ears, and my mother's voice, no longer cheerful, was now filled with disappointment. Rebecca, I only want what's best for you, you're making a huge mistake. I took a deep breath. I'm not buying that house. I hung up before she could say anything else. I thought that was the end of it. I was too naive. Not even 15 minutes later, my phone started buzzing again. Melissa. I sighed but opened the message anyway. Rebecca, you need to check this list ASAP. These are the best houses in the city, close to parks, schools, perfect for a family. Attached were multiple links, all of them to massive, expensive homes, nothing remotely close to what I was looking for. I didn't reply. Another message came in instantly. You need to be more realistic. A small house in the suburbs isn't a good idea. These are a much better investment. More links. When I continued ignoring her, Melissa called me directly. I know you saw my messages. I sighed and decided to pick up. What do you want, Melissa? I'm just trying to help you. You can't be so stubborn. A house in the city is still the best choice. I closed my eyes, trying to stay calm. Melissa, I don't need a big house. I don't want to live in the city. A few seconds of silence stretched between us. Rebecca? Her voice softened, carrying an unsettling undertone. Don't you ever think about family? About me, Derek, the kids? My body tensed. What are you trying to say? The kids really need more space, you know that. If you buy this house, my whole family could move in, we could share the expenses. Like a real family. I felt the blood in my veins turn cold. You're joking, right? Of course not. I set my phone down, my hands tightening into fists. They had planned this all along. Mom hadn't been looking for a house for me, they had been looking for a house for Melissa's family with They had never actually cared about what I wanted. Determined to put an end to this, I called Amanda Chan, a real estate agent I had already researched. Rebecca, I have a listing that just went up this morning, a small cottage about 40 minutes outside the city, big yard, a greenhouse. I think it's exactly what you're looking for. I didn't hesitate. I want to see it immediately. I spent a part of my youth waiting for my family to acknowledge me. But now, I don't have time to wait anymore. I will decide my own life. I bought the house. After years of saving, planning, and fighting against my family's interference, I finally signed the contract and officially owned a space that belonged only to me. The small cottage, with its wide front porch, charming garden, and greenhouse in the backyard, was now mine. Standing in the sunlit living room, looking out at the yard where I would plant vegetables and flowers, I felt something I had never truly experienced before. Freedom. But that joy didn't last long. Because tonight, I would have to face my family. Saturday dinner at my parents' house unfolded as usual. As I stepped inside, no one knew that today would be the day everything changed. Mom was busy in the kitchen. Dad sat in his armchair reading the newspaper, while Melissa and Derek struggled to keep up with their 3 kids. The children ran around the living room, their laughter echoing through the house. As always, I felt like a spectator in my own family, present, but never truly belonging. We sat down, and dinner began as it always did. Dad complained about the economy, Derek grumbled about work, and Melissa talked about the struggles of raising 3 kids in a cramped apartment. I didn't rush to say anything. But when my mother turned to me, her voice filled with anticipation, I knew the moment had come. "Rebecca, I talked to Martha and she said the homeowner is waiting for your response. If you agree, we can move forward next week." They still thought I would follow their plan. I set my knife and fork down and looked directly at my mother. "Mom, I don't need to see that house anymore." She blinked. "What? Rebecca, you can't pass up such a great opportunity." I took a deep breath. I already bought a house. Silence crashed over the room. Melissa froze mid-measure while serving Lila. Derek looked up, and my father slowly lowered his newspaper. I could see my mother's expression shift from shock to anger. "What did you just say?" I kept my voice steady. "I found the house I wanted, and I bought it." All eyes were on me. Not a single one of them looked happy. My father slammed his hand on the table, his voice rising in fury. "Rebecca, you dared to buy a house without telling your family first?" "Dared?" I blinked, feeling a wave of disbelief rise in my chest. "Dad, it's my money, my decision. Why would I need permission?" My mother shook her head, her face turning red. "Do you have any idea how selfish you're being? We had a plan for you. Martha's house was perfect, and now you've gone and done something completely irrational?" I stiffened. "A plan for me?" My eyes swept across the table, and then I noticed something. Melissa wasn't shocked. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even surprised. She just sat there, watching me with an unreadable expression. Wait a minute. A sickening realization crept up my spine. "What exactly was your plan?" My mother let out a long sigh, as if I was the one being difficult. "Rebecca, that house wasn't just for you, it could have been a real home for the family." My stomach twisted into knots. "What family?" Melissa spoke, her voice eerily calm. "Me, Derek, the kids. We've talked about this before. You know our apartment is too small. Your house has enough space for all of us." I froze. "What are you talking about?" Derek cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. "Rebecca, this is a great opportunity for all of us. If we lived together, we could save on rent, and you'd have your family close by." It felt like a punch to the chest. They never intended for me to live alone. They planned to turn my house into a free home for Melissa. I turned to my mother, but she didn't object. My father remained silent. "You really planned all of this without even asking me?" My mother crossed her arms, her expression filled with disapproval. "Rebecca, you can't be so selfish. We're family. Melissa needs your help." "Help?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You don't want to help me, you just want me to take care of everything." Melissa frowned. "Rebecca, you're overreacting. This is the most logical solution. We're sisters." "I thought you'd be happy to help us." "No! This isn't helping, this is taking advantage." I pushed my chair back and stood up. "None of you care about what I want, you only care about what I can do for this family." A heavy silence settled over the room. Finally my mother spoke, her voice ice cold. "Rebecca, you will regret this decision." I met her gaze head on. "No, Mom. For the first time in my life, I know I won't." And then I walked away, without looking back. The room was suffocatingly silent. I stood there, breathing heavily, feeling like I had been dragged into a nightmare I never chose. My mother shot up from her chair, her face red, her eyes blazing with anger. "Rebecca, do you even hear yourself? Are you really going to turn your back on your family?" My father slammed his hand against the table, making the water glasses tremble. "Stop acting like a selfish child. Family is about supporting each other." I had heard those words my entire life. They talked about family when they forced me to give up things for Melissa as a child. They talked about family when they expected me to sacrifice my dreams so she could have her opportunities. And now they were talking about family, to pressure me into providing free housing for Melissa. I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "This isn't support, this is manipulation." Melissa let out an exasperated sigh, her voice dripping with frustration. "Rebecca, I don't understand why you're acting like this. You know our situation. The kids don't have enough space, the apartment is too small. You have no idea how hard it is." I looked straight at her, feeling the invisible chains that had bound me for years finally start to break. "You think I don't know? You think I haven't heard you complain about it every single week? But that's your problem, Melissa, not mine." My mother screamed. "Rebecca, how can you say that to your sister?" I couldn't hold back anymore. "Then why does she get to treat me like a personal bank? Why does everyone get to plan my entire life without ever asking me?" My father's voice cut through the air, sharp and thunderous. "Because you're the one who can handle it. Because you're the one who doesn't have to struggle like Melissa." That was it? They didn't care what I wanted, they only cared about what I could provide. A bitter laugh escaped me, slicing through the tension in the room. "Thank you, Dad. Finally, you said the truth out loud." I took a deep breath, my chest burning from years of suppressed resentment. "Let me make this clear for the last time. No one is living in my house. Not Melissa, not Derek, not the kids. No one." Melissa's face filled with panic. "Rebecca, don't do this, the kids don't deserve to suffer." I stared at her, my voice razor sharp. "The kids are your responsibility. You and Derek had them, not me. Stop acting like I owe you something. This is my life, not a charity fund for your family." My mother's mouth fell open, while my father looked like he was about to explode. "You'll regret this, Rebecca." I stepped back, keeping my eyes locked on them. "No, I won't. The only thing I regret is not standing up for myself sooner." Then I turned and walked out, leaving behind my mother's angry screams, my father's furious growls, and Melissa's pathetic, fake pleas. I didn't look back. I thought that when I walked out of my parents' house that night, it would be over. I hoped they would finally understand my message, that I was no longer someone they could control. But I was wrong. The storm didn't end that night. It had only just begun. "Melissa. Rebecca, you didn't really mean that, did you? You're not actually going to abandon me and the kids. We're family." I didn't respond. 30 minutes later, another message came in. "Melissa. Rebecca, please, do you know how long I cried after you left? I can't believe how heartless you're being." I sighed, tossing my phone aside, trying to focus on work, but the messages kept coming. "Midday. I've always supported you, Rebecca, and this is how you treat me? Afternoon? You're being so selfish. I can't believe you would be this cruel." By evening, the messages had shifted from pleading to guilt-tripping and blame. "Melissa. Mom cried all night. She can't believe you would treat your family like this. How can you sleep at night, knowing the kids don't have a comfortable place to live? Rebecca, you're such a disappointment." I blocked her number. But it didn't stop there. This time it wasn't just Melissa. Mom's number. I let it go to voicemail, but she called again, immediately. Clenching my teeth, I pressed answer. "Mom, I'm working." Her voice was filled with tears. "Rebecca, you're killing me. I can't believe you would betray your family like this." I closed my eyes, forcing myself to stay calm. "Mom, I'm not betraying anyone. I'm just living my own life. Your own life? Her voice rang with heartbreak. Do you really think you can live alone without your family? Do you think you'll be happy turning your back on the people who raised you? I gripped the phone tightly. Mom, I don't want to argue about this anymore. No, Rebecca, I can't let you make this mistake. I sighed, my hands shaking with anger. Then don't contact me anymore. I hung up. But she wasn't the only one. An hour later, the relatives started. Aunt Linda. Rebecca, sweetheart, I know you mean well, but you can't do this to your mother. She's sacrificed so much for you. Uncle Mike. Kiddo, family always comes first. Are you really going to abandon Melissa? Susan, Mom's best friend. Your mother is heartbroken, Rebecca. She doesn't deserve this cruelty. I couldn't believe it. I had cut them off, and yet they still found ways to drag me back in. But the worst part wasn't over. 3 days later, I got a message from my former teacher, Ms. Peterson, my high school teacher. Rebecca, I always thought you were a kind-hearted girl. But I'm truly disappointed after hearing what happened with your family. Someone as educated as you should understand that family is the most important thing. I felt my chest tighten with fury. They had reached out to my old teacher just to pressure me? I immediately blocked her number. But I knew that wasn't enough. I needed to disappear from their reach entirely. That afternoon I walked straight into a telecommunications store. I want to change my phone number. The employee glanced at me, looking slightly surprised. We can do that, but are you sure? Once we change it, you'll lose all calls and messages from your old number. I didn't hesitate. I'm sure. 10 minutes later, I held a brand new phone number in my hands. One that only my workplace and a trusted few friends would have. As I stepped out of the store, I felt as if a weight had been lifted off my chest. This time, they wouldn't be able to reach me. I knew they wouldn't give up easily. But neither would I. I had finally stood up for myself, and I was never going back. I had disappeared from their reach. Not in a miraculous way, not literally, but enough that they could no longer control me. 3 weeks after changing my phone number, I quietly moved into my new home. No one in my family knew where I was. I left no address, made no announcements on social media, and didn't use any familiar moving services, just in case they tried to track me down. I truly felt free. The first morning I woke up in my new home, I stood by the window and took a deep breath. No more guilt-ridden messages. No more manipulative phone calls. No more burdens I never chose. Only peace. I finally started living the life I had dreamed of for years. I turned the second bedroom into a proper home office, complete with a large wooden desk facing the window, where I could look out at the lush greenery while I worked. My computer, books and notebooks were neatly arranged, just the way I liked it. On weekends I spent time in the garden, planting my first seeds in the soft soil, the cool earth beneath my fingers, the excitement of watching tiny sprouts emerge each day. It all made me feel alive. At night, I sat on the porch, sipping hot tea, listening to the gentle hum of insects in the quiet darkness. No more screaming children, no more suffocating dinners filled with judgment. Just me. And the peace I had fought for. Without my family interfering, my work improved significantly. I could fully concentrate on investment projects without being interrupted by meaningless calls. I started receiving praise from my superiors for my performance, and within 3 months, I was recommended for a promotion. But I didn't stop there. I enrolled in an advanced investment strategy course, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for because I was too busy dealing with my family's problems. I no longer had to worry about their expectations. I no longer had to live according to the plans they had set for me. I was doing everything for myself. Of course, they didn't give up easily. Even though they had no way to contact me directly, my mother and Melissa started using social media as a tool for emotional manipulation. I happened to see one of my mother's Facebook posts through a friend's account. It's heartbreaking to raise a child, love them with all your heart, only for them to one day turn their back on their own family. Some people may be successful in their careers, but without family, are they truly happy? Below it were pity-filled comments from relatives and her friends. Rebecca is so ungrateful, her mother did everything for her. Why are kids today so selfish? I always thought Rebecca was a good girl, but now I'm so disappointed. Melissa wasn't far behind. The kids ask about Aunt Rebecca every day. It's so sad they no longer have someone to rely on. I can't believe some people put themselves above their family. Guilt-tripping, blame, passive-aggressive attacks. But this time, none of it got to me. Because I had realized something important. They weren't angry that I left. They were angry that I took back control of my life. They couldn't accept that I was living without them. They couldn't stand that I was no longer a free resource for them to drain. But that was no longer my problem. One morning, while sipping coffee on my porch, I thought about all the things my parents had told me growing up. They always said they wanted me to be successful. They always taught me to be independent, strong, and have a mind of my own. And now that I had done exactly that, they couldn't accept it. They never truly wanted me to be strong. They only wanted me to be strong in ways that benefited them. But I no longer lived to please them. I am no longer the Rebecca I used to be. The one who always conceded. Always tried to earn their approval. Now I am myself. And I am proud of that. Maybe one day I will find people who truly appreciate me. Maybe it will be genuine friends, a new community, or someone to share my life with. But whether that happens or not, I will be okay. Because I've realized an important truth. The best family is sometimes just yourself, until you find the people who deserve to become your family. And for me, that is enough. Rebecca's story reflects a harsh reality in many families. Favoritism, imposed expectations, and financial exploitation by relatives. Not everyone is born into a family that loves unconditionally, and sometimes, boundaries must be set to protect oneself from manipulation. Living for yourself does not mean being selfish. It is a choice to break free from toxic relationships. True success and independence are not about earning family approval, but about knowing your worth and having the courage to live by it. Despite the disapproval of those who never valued you. What do you think about Rebecca's story? Have you ever faced family pressure or exploitation like this? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more real-life stories about family and life. I knew I was a disappointment from a very young age. No one ever said it outright, but I could see it in my mother's eyes, in my father's sighs, and in the way they treated me compared to my younger sister. I am Rachel, their firstborn, the child who was supposed to be a boy. No one spoke the words, but I always felt the silent disappointment. The way they had expected something different on the day I was born. 3 years later, my mother gave birth to my sister Lily, and I overheard something I was never meant to hear. Maybe next time it'll be a boy. My mother's voice echoes in my memory. A brief remark, yet one that haunted me throughout my childhood. But the next time never came. Complications from Lily's birth left my mother unable to have more children, and their dream of having a son was shattered forever. Instead of accepting reality, they placed all their hopes on Lily. I never knew if it was because they truly adored her, or if she was simply their last chance to have a child they could love without disappointment. It didn't take Lily long to figure this out. She quickly learned how to pout, how to whine at the right moments, how to flash a bright smile whenever our parents praised her. And just like that, everything that was once mine was pushed aside. The love, the attention, and even the small things a child should naturally receive. I was never starved or abandoned. I had enough clothes, enough food, and I attended a good school. But warmth was always in short supply. If Lily was the sun, shining brightly in our home, then I was merely my own shadow. I didn't have her big, sparkling eyes, her soft, sweet voice, or the kind of innocence that made adults melt. I was just Rachel, the quiet, independent eldest daughter that no one really paid attention to. Over time I learned to stand on my own without expecting protection. As a child, I had tried to impress my parents, hoping that if I studied hard enough, behaved well enough, they would be proud of me. But the praise I longed for never came. My academic achievements earned nothing more than a brief nod, while one of Lily's scribbled drawings could make my mother beam with excitement for an entire day. One evening when I was 17, During dinner, I announced, "I want to study business." I expected some kind of reaction. Maybe a little pride, maybe some curiosity. But my parents only exchanged glances. "Are you sure?" my mother asked, setting her fork down. "That field is quite dry. Why not consider something more suitable for a girl? Teaching, perhaps? Or nursing?" My father nodded in immediate agreement. I looked at Lily. She just smirked and shrugged. I had predicted their response. I had anticipated the disappointment in my mother's eyes. I was used to it, that feeling of never being enough. But that night, I realized something else. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their permission to pursue the life I wanted. Because if I couldn't find my place in this family, I would carve out my own path. I left home to study business at the University of Washington, carrying nothing but a single suitcase and the resolve to never look back. There was no farewell party, no warm embrace from my parents. Only Lily, leaning against my bedroom doorframe, arms crossed over her chest, with that familiar, lazy smile. "You're going to fail," she said as I grabbed my bag, "and then you'll come crawling back here like a loser." I didn't respond. I just walked away. College was a challenge, but it was also my liberation. No longer did I have to live in Lily's shadow or witness the silent disappointment in my parents' eyes. Here, I was no longer Rachel, the unwanted child. I was Rachel Matthews, a business student, someone who could take control of her own life. And it was in the university library, among towering stacks of finance textbooks, that I met Nathan. The first time we crossed paths, I was reaching for a macroeconomics book, when I accidentally bumped into someone standing beside me. The book slipped from my hands and fell to the floor. "Sorry." I bent down to pick it up, but his hand was faster. "It's fine," he said with a smile, handing me the book. "Rachel, right? I've seen you in Professor Anderson's class. You're the one who always asks the tough questions." I felt my face heat up. I never thought anyone would notice me, let alone remember my name. From that day on, Nathan became a part of my life. We studied together, debated lecture topics, and gradually, our study sessions turned into coffee dates and late-night walks around campus. He was the first person to see me not through comparisons or expectations. He just saw me for who I was. By the time I graduated, Nathan was already working at a well-known financial consulting firm. He waited for me, and as soon as I landed my first job, we decided to move in together, in a small apartment in downtown Seattle. I didn't think my parents would care, but I still called to tell them. "Nathan?" My mother's voice suddenly turned unusually cheerful. "Your boyfriend? He works in finance? That's a good job." I hadn't expected their interest, and even less so what they said next. "Bring him home," my father said. "We want to meet him." I knew the reason. It wasn't because they wanted to give me their blessing. It was because they thought they had finally gotten a son. Nathan didn't realize it at first. When we went home that weekend, my mother hugged him tightly as if he were her own flesh and blood. My father patted his shoulder, eagerly asking about his job, his future, and even his plans for marriage. I watched it all with a strange feeling in my chest. They had never looked at me with that kind of pride. But with Nathan, with a man, they didn't bother to hide it. That night as we were leaving, my mother beamed at him. "Nathan, will you come home for Christmas, and for Thanksgiving too?" I was standing right there, but they didn't mention me, as if Nathan was the one who truly mattered in this family. I stayed silent the entire drive home. But inside me, something had shattered. We got married a year later, in a small and simple ceremony, just the way I wanted. No extravagance, no noise. Just a little garden, a few close friends, and Nathan standing in front of me, smiling lovingly as he said his vows. I thought it was the beginning of a happy and peaceful life, but I had forgotten one crucial thing. My family never left me alone. Less than 6 months after the wedding, the questions began. "When are you two planning to have kids?" At first it came up in my mother's weekly calls. Then, it became the main topic at every family dinner. "You know, young couples shouldn't wait too long," she said as soon as I sat down at the table. I read in an article that the longer you wait, the harder it is to conceive. We want to be financially stable first, I replied, trying to stay calm. My father shook his head and set his glass down. You're overcomplicating things, Rachel. Your mother and I had nothing when we raised you two and we managed just fine. What matters is having a complete family. Nathan gave a small, awkward smile, saying nothing. I knew he felt uncomfortable, but I wished he would speak up for me. But what shocked me the most wasn't the pressure from my parents. It was Lily's change in behavior. One Saturday evening, after a long day at work, I received a text from her. Come home. I have news. When I walked into the living room, Lily was sitting on the couch, her hand resting proudly on her stomach. I'm pregnant, she announced, her voice full of excitement. My mother let out a joyful gasp and rushed to hug her. My father's face lit up with pride. That's wonderful, Lily, he said. We're going to have a grandchild. I stood there in silence. They had never been this happy when I told them I was getting married. But soon their excitement turned into something else. But where's the father? I asked, glancing around. I had never heard Lily mention any serious relationship. My mother waved her hand dismissively. Oh, that doesn't matter. Men come and go. What's important is that she's having a baby. And she won't be alone. She has us. I understood immediately. Once again, Lily had been placed at the center of their world. In the months that followed, my entire family seemed to revolve around Lily and the unborn child. My mother redecorated Lily's old room into a perfect nursery. Something I had never been given. On the day baby Emma was born, I went to the hospital, hoping to see my sister grow into a more responsible person. But no, Lily was still Lily. Can you hold her for a bit? She asked the moment I walked into the hospital room. I'm exhausted. I looked down at the baby in her arms. She had big, round eyes, gazing up at me with an innocence I had never been allowed to have. And in that moment, I realized this child would have everything I never did. But the worst part was that Nathan noticed it too. He quickly grew attached to Emma. Every weekend when we visited, he was always the first to pick her up, to play with her. I saw him smile at Emma in a way I had never seen him smile at me. My mother noticed, and she didn't miss the chance to emphasize it. Nathan really has a knack for being a father, she said, watching him hold Emma in his arms. It would be such a shame if you couldn't give him a baby soon, Rachel. I clenched my fists under the table but remained silent. I was used to being overlooked. But I never expected that even in my own marriage, I could become an outsider once again. As time passed, the pressure to have children weighed heavier on me. At first I tried to ignore my mother's repeated questions, my father's knowing looks, Lily's casual teasing. But gradually, even Nathan began to change. Rachel, do you think it's time we started seriously trying? He asked one evening, over dinner. I set my fork down, my throat tightening. You think I haven't been serious? I replied, my voice quiet but sharp. He sighed. That's not what I mean. But it's been over a year and... He didn't finish, but I understood. We had been trying. Every month I tracked my cycle, tried every possible method. But the result was always the same. Nothing. Worry slowly turned into fear. Something was wrong with me. I scheduled an appointment with a gynecologist. Nathan went with me, holding my hand as I walked into the clinic. The tests were conducted in silence. Blood work, ultrasounds, hormone evaluations. Then came the agonizing wait. And then, the day of the results arrived. The doctor looked at me with sympathetic eyes. Rachel, I'm so sorry. I didn't hear the rest. The words passed through my ears without sticking. Premature ovarian failure. Unable to conceive naturally. The chances are very low, nearly impossible. I clenched my hands in my lap. I knew this news would change everything. That night, Nathan and I sat in silence at the dinner table. Neither of us touched our food. We can try IVF, he finally said. Or adoption. I nodded, but deep inside, I knew things would never be the same again. I knew I couldn't keep this to myself for long. The following weekend, I told my parents over dinner. I tried to stay calm, but my heart pounded as I forced the words out. I can't have children. Silence filled the room. Then my mother set her chopsticks down, crossed her arms and pressed her lips together in disdain. So you're useless then. Her words cut through me like a blade. Mom, I gasped, barely believing my own ears. My father didn't even look at me. An empty vessel, he muttered, shaking his head in disappointment. Lily chuckled, bouncing Emma in her arms. You're not really a woman then, she said with a pitying smile. Mom must really regret putting her hopes in you. I turned to Nathan, silently begging him to say something to defend me. But he just sat there, staring at the table, saying nothing. I felt like I was sinking, lost in the very family I was born into. I couldn't stomach the rest of that dinner. I got up, walked away, leaving behind the hushed whispers at the table. That night, I lay in bed with my back turned to Nathan, silent tears soaking my pillow. I knew I had lost something. Not just the ability to be a mother, but my last remaining place in this family. I had thought the greatest pain in my life would be not being able to have children. But I was wrong. The greatest pain wasn't losing something. It was realizing that the people you trusted most could betray you. After that fateful night, things between Nathan and me slowly changed. He started spending more time at my parents' house, or rather, with Lily and Emma. At first, I told myself it was just normal concern. That he simply adored Emma as an innocent child. That he was trying to fill the emptiness we couldn't. But then, I noticed the small, yet undeniable changes. He started coming home later after family dinners, always with the excuse of helping Lily with something. Lily's messages to his phone became more frequent, always saying things like, Nathan, are you free? I need your help with this. He mentioned Emma more than he mentioned me in our conversations. One Friday night, I came home from work, carrying a bag of Chinese takeout, Nathan's favorite. But the apartment was empty. He wasn't there. I called him. No answer. A bad feeling crept into my chest. I unlocked my phone and instinctively scrolled through social media. I rarely looked at Lily's posts. But this time, one popped up at the top of my feed, making my hands tremble. A picture of Nathan, Lily and Emma sitting on the couch in my parents' living room. Nathan was in the middle, Emma nestled against his chest, and Lily leaning into him more than necessary. But what truly made my heart clench was the caption beneath the photo. A happy moment with the ones I love the most. The ones I love the most? I stared at the screen. My hands turned ice cold. This couldn't be real, it couldn't be. But the truth was right in front of me. I jumped into my car, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I didn't care if they thought I was crazy. I needed answers. The front door was unlocked, as always. I pushed it open, hearing voices coming from the living room. Nathan, you know we've always considered you part of this family, my mother's voice carried through the house. I froze, my feet cemented to the floor. And you deserve a real family, my father added. A woman who can give you children. No one would blame you for choosing the right thing. I held my breath. Then Lily spoke, her voice soft but dripping with meaning. We all know Rachel can't give that to you. I couldn't take it anymore. What the hell is going on here? I stepped into the room, my voice shaking with fury. They all turned to look at me, their surprise lasting only a second before it faded into mild annoyance. Nathan's face went pale, but he said nothing. Lily just smiled. That smug, victorious smile. Rachel! My mother sighed, as if I had just interrupted an important discussion. I turned to Nathan, my throat raw with anger. Do you have anything to say to me? He avoided my gaze, staring at the floor. No excuses. No denial. The ground beneath me felt like it was crumbling. Do you love her? My voice was ice. Nathan didn't look up, but after a long pause he nodded. Just one simple nod, and it shattered everything I had ever believed in. Lily placed a hand on Nathan's arm, a silent claim. "You should have seen this coming, Rachel," she said, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "A man deserves a real family. A real wife." All the emotions inside me evaporated. No more pain. No more rage. Just emptiness. I turned away without another word. That night, I went home and packed my things in silence. I left a single note on the kitchen counter. No tears, no pleading, no arguments. Just a few simple words. "File the divorce papers, my lawyer will be in touch." And just like that, this chapter of my life ended. I walked away without looking back. The divorce was swift and cold. We split everything according to the law. No fights, no drawn-out drama. Nathan and Lily got what they wanted, and I got what I needed. Freedom. At first, the emptiness was all I could feel. I had lost a marriage, a family, a part of my life. But as the days passed, I started to realize I hadn't really lost anything at all. Nathan was never meant for me. My family never truly loved me. And if I had spent my whole life not realizing that, now was the time for me to start over. I moved to a new city. A place with no old memories, no pitying looks, no whispered gossip. I buried myself in work, spent time reading, exercising, doing things I had never had the chance to do. Then one day, I bumped into a man at the grocery store. "Sorry." His voice was warm and deep as he hurried to pick up the milk cartons I had just dropped. I looked up, and for the first time in months I truly smiled. His name was Daniel. We started with a cup of coffee, then a dinner, then endless conversations. Daniel was unlike anyone I had ever met. He wasn't in a rush, he didn't pressure me to share my past. He was simply there, listening when I wanted to talk, staying silent when I needed space. When I told him that I couldn't have children, I had braced myself for disappointment. But he simply took my hand, his gaze gentle. "Rachel, I love you. Not for what you can or can't do. If we want children we can adopt. If not, that's okay too. I just want you by my side." I broke down in tears right then and there. A year later we got married in a small ceremony at City Hall. No parents, no Lily. Just our closest friends and a man who truly loved me for who I was. We built a simple, happy life together. I never thought I could love someone so completely. Then one day, everything changed. I started feeling exhausted every morning, dizzy, heavier than usual. I thought I was just overworked. Until Daniel joked, half seriously, "What if you're pregnant?" I laughed. That was impossible. But then, a strange feeling made me pause. A week later I sat in a doctor's office, clutching a positive pregnancy test in my shaking hands, when the doctor smiled warmly and said, "Congratulations, Rachel. You're pregnant." I cried. I had spent my whole life believing I couldn't have children, believing I was a broken woman, as my mother had once called me. But life had a way of proving us wrong. 9 months later, I held my baby boy in my arms. A healthy little boy, with Daniel's eyes and my dark hair. We named him Ethan, the greatest gift life had ever given me. 3 years later my life was completely different. I had a loving husband, a wonderful son, and a real family. Not the one I was born into, but the one I had chosen. I no longer thought about the past, about Nathan, about Lily, about my parents. But fate had its own way of bringing them back into my life. Not to hurt me, but to let me witness their downfall. That evening Daniel had just received a promotion, and we decided to celebrate with dinner at an upscale restaurant in the heart of the city. I was sipping my wine when my eyes happened to scan the dimly lit corner of the restaurant. And I froze. There, under the warm golden lights, was Lily, leaning in close to a man I didn't recognize, her hands gliding over his arm intimately. That man was not Nathan. They weren't even trying to be discreet. Flirtatious glances, sweet smiles, and then a kiss, right in the middle of the restaurant. Daniel noticed my change in demeanor and leaned in. What's wrong, love? I didn't answer. I simply lifted my phone and snapped a few pictures, each frame capturing her betrayal perfectly. When the stranger left, Lily remained at the table, pulling out her phone with a self-satisfied smile. I didn't know why I did it, but I tapped on Nathan's social media profile. Right at the top of his page, a picture of him and Lily appeared. A perfect family portrait, Nathan holding Lily and Emma, with the caption, "A complete life with the ones I love the most." How ridiculous. I didn't do anything right then. I simply saved the pictures into a secure folder and went on enjoying my evening, but I knew one day I would need them. A week later I ran into them. I had taken Ethan to the park when I spotted my parents, Lily, Nathan, and Emma on the other side of the playground. My mother was the first to see me. She froze, her eyes locking onto Ethan, the grandson she never even knew existed. Lily was the first to break the silence. "Oh, look who it is. Rachel." Her voice dripped with mockery. "Well, I see you finally managed to have a child. Must have taken some help from modern science, huh?" I smiled calmly, pulling out my phone and opening the folder. "You're right, Lily. Science is truly amazing. But you know what's even more fascinating?" I tapped my screen, revealing the photos of Lily wrapped around a stranger at the restaurant. Immediately, her smile vanished. "Where did you get that?" Her voice was sharp, her face turning pale. Nathan frowned, snatching the phone from my hand. As he stared at the pictures, his confusion turned to anger, then finally, to complete shock. "Lily, what the hell is this?" Lily stammered, scrambling for an explanation, but I didn't give her the chance. "Oh, I'm not done yet," I said coolly, pulling out a thick envelope. Ever wonder why Lily got pregnant so easily? Nathan stiffened. "And what are you saying?" I smirked, tossing the documents onto the bench beside us. "Emma's DNA test results." I met Nathan's eyes. "Did you really think she was your daughter?" "Because the test says otherwise." Nathan's world shattered right in front of him. He turned to Lily, but she could only bite her lip, unable to utter a single defense. No, this can't be." His voice cracked. I crossed my arms, watching him. The man who betrayed me, who left me behind for his so-called perfect family. As it all crumbled before his eyes. Nathan left Lily immediately. He refused to support her, refused to acknowledge Emma as his child. With nowhere else to turn, Lily moved back in with my parents. But this time she was no longer their golden child. The parents who once praised her endlessly now only scowled whenever they looked at her. Not because they cared about me, but because they despised Lily's failure. And me? I walked away without a shred of pity. They should never have chosen to cast me aside, because I was never the type to come crawling back for their love. I had a new life, a real family. And them? All they had left was regret. I thought that after everything, they would finally leave me alone. But the same people who once threw me away came back, begging for another chance. It all started on a quiet Saturday morning. I was making breakfast for Daniel and Ethan, the sound of my son's laughter filling our warm, cozy kitchen. Then, the doorbell rang. I didn't need to check the peephole to know who was on the other side. I opened the door, and there they were. My father, my mother, and Lily, with Emma. My mother spoke first, her eyes filled with tears. But I felt nothing. "Rachel, can we have a moment?" Her voice trembled. I crossed my arms, staring at them. "What do you want?" I asked, making no move to invite them inside. My father cleared his throat, as if he wasn't used to lowering himself before me. "We made mistakes," my father said slowly. "Can you let us meet Ethan?" My heart turned to ice. They weren't here for me. They were here for my son. My mother blinked, her voice trembling. "He's our grandson, we just want to be his grandparents." Lily, who had been standing behind them, remained silent. The arrogance she once carried was gone. When our eyes met, I saw the regret in hers. But it changed nothing. I looked at them calmly and said, "It gave up your right to be his grandparents a long time ago." My mother was stunned. "Rachel, you can't treat your parents like this," she cried, her voice breaking. I let out a cold chuckle. "And what about the way you treated me?" I asked, my voice sharp. "You threw me away like garbage, called me useless and empty vessel. But now that you see I have a happy family, now that I have a child, you come back demanding the right to be grandparents?" "No, I don't think so." My mother broke into sobs, my father stood frozen, unable to say a word. Lily finally spoke, her voice so small it was almost a whisper. "Rachel, I'm sorry." I looked at her, realizing, for the first time, I had nothing left to say. That night, I told Daniel everything. He wasn't surprised, he simply placed his hand over mine, his eyes filled with understanding. "You made the right choice." I sighed, looking over at Ethan, the son I once thought I could never have. "They didn't truly want me," I murmured. "They only wanted what I have." Daniel squeezed my hand. "Family isn't about blood," he said. "Family is love. It's a choice." And we chose each other. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. I had finally stepped out of the shadows of my past. And this time I would never look back. Rachel's story isn't just about betrayal or family wounds. It's about reclaiming herself. She learned that family isn't defined by blood, but by those who choose to love and respect each other. Those who once discarded her, abandoned her, and only returned when she was happy, they no longer had a place in her life. Forgiveness is not an obligation, and cutting off toxic relationships is not wrong. Sometimes, true happiness comes from walking away from what no longer deserves you. What are your thoughts on Rachel's story? Have you ever experienced something similar, or have a different perspective on family and betrayal? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional and meaningful stories about family life.